the National Native American Boarding School Healing Coalition. I'll let her introduce herself more here in just a little bit. Please do continue to put your questions in the chat as she goes through her presentation, and we'll say about 15 minutes at the end of it. All right, so Sandy, I'm gonna start your slideshow.
Yeah.
And then you should just be able to look up there.
And how do I go to the next one?
You should just be able to click.
Oh, click on on there,
Yeah.
not on the thing.
Should just be able to click right there.
Okay.
All right, and then that's you up there.
Oh, okay, cool.
And you're talking right there, and Karina's on the side just in case.
She's in the sidecar making
She's
sure.
right there. All right, well, take it away,
Awesome.
Sandy. Thank you so much
Oh.
for coming down.
You bet. Well, thank you for inviting us. I really excited to be here. Chantewa Shteo Nape Chuspi. My name is Sandy Whitehawk Lakota Mia Chokatanajiwia from the Rosebud Reservation in South Dakota. And I'm here today with Jerry Dearly, who at the end of our time together, he's going to sing a song for us. But he may have something to say as we move along in our in the PowerPoint. I apologize for my throat. I don't know what's up. I woke up with a plugged ear and funny throat. So hopefully not too annoying. All right. Well, I wanted to say too, I really appreciate it when people come and from all over the United States to be part of a Zoom. And it makes me think of how a good friend of Jerry and I's, who's no longer with us, used to talk about that there were prophecies about a web, that there would be a spider web that would go around the whole world. And we used to always say, that's what this is. You know, he said this was predicted, many, many years ago. And I found that interesting. And it is interesting that they call it the web, the interweb, or however they've referred to it in the beginning. Now we just say the internet, but web was used. And we all know what that reference is the, like a spider. What do they call that? Spider, what's it called? When they make their thing, what's it called?
What?
Their thread. Yeah, the thread. It's threads. All right, let's hit it. Oh, it's up there. See, I was looking down here for it to come up, and that weirds me out. I'm just looking at. Oh, okay. So, oops, I want to go back. How do I go back? How do I go back?
Oh, we gotta go back?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. I first wanted to say, yes, today I'll be talking about mental health outcomes of Native American adoptees. And the picture that you're looking at, Joe Bush, a White Earth spiritual leader, who was part of the first of its kind held on their land of welcoming their relatives who had been separated through adoption and foster care. So he was there on that, and Jerry is part of the ceremony that we offer to those communities where people gather that have been separated through adoption or foster care. It was really a beautiful time because I was watching the two of them work, and as it is protocol, when you're not on your own territory, you always ask permission of the person who holds that right in the territory that you are in. And I remember Joe Bush saying to Jerry, just do what you're going to do. It'll be good. And so the two of them worked together as we spent 3 days with the relatives, helping them process things and put things together and ending with a ceremony. Okay. So as I was being started to talk about adoptees and the things I was learning by listening to relatives who had been adopted out, I thought, why are we not using research as a way to document mental health outcomes so that that could be used in court, because right now in Minnesota, we have the highest rate of Indian child removal in all the United States. And even though we have the ICWA law is not held to any kind of consequence if you don't follow it. We can lose our license can be suspended if we don't pay parking tickets. But I don't know of one judge or one lawyer or one social worker who has been sanctioned for not following ICWA. So I started thinking, this is not right. What little thing can I do? And I formed a research team. I'm not an academic myself. I knew what I wanted to find out. And the first thing we did was, the literature search. And this was all that existed for adoptees on their outcomes. And the largest, all of them had just talked to 20 people each, which is standard in academia, but it doesn't tell us much. They're all, they all did it because most of them are adoptees. David Fanchel is not an adoptee. Carol Locust is not an adoptee. The rest are all adoptees. So they had an interest in the complications that adoptees feel being raised in a home that's not their biology. So, oh shoot, I did it. Sorry, I'll try not to drive crazy, but it happens. So anyway, we formed a study, and I just wanted to show you that we did our due diligence to get it out as much as we could throughout the country. And I said I wanted hundreds of respondents. And they all looked at me like, yeah, whatever. I said, no, it will happen if it's out there, because people want. I know adoptee voice is not being they're upheld in a way that is legitimate. When I first started talking about adoption and the complications of it, there was still we still fight against this general attitude that adoption is a beautiful thing. Adoption gives a child permanency. The Children's Bureau's 3 pillars are safety, permanency, and well-being. And yet, I don't know hardly any adoptee when they turn 18 want to find out who they are, where they come from. And that's a birthright that all of us have. But adoption process and the philosophies around adoption are not that. We hear so many times where adoptive parents have said to their adopted children, you should be great. Well, I used to hear that from my adoptive mother. I should be grateful to be saved from the reservation. Anybody would, if I didn't eat all my food, she didn't use the China reference of, not eating your food because kids in China. She'd say, there's kids on the reservations who would gladly eat your scraps. And I didn't know what a reservation was. I didn't know what being Indian meant or anything like that. But even in home, then that's an extreme situation. But even in homes where there's generally, more stability in terms of no violence, there's still this thought of we have to fulfill the emotional well-being of the parents that adopted us. And there's a lot of times it's said subtly, a lot of times it's said just outright, right? And I think a lot of that comes from many of who adopt because of infertility have not grieved that or had a long enough time to really come to terms with that. And then to expect a child who does not have any of your genetic energy to fulfill that it is not right to be asking the child to do that in the first place. So, I mean, I've been getting pretty bold over the years because I started talking about this in 2000. And I finally just say we need to be saying it outright that a baby, like I said it from my point of view, I said, I'm not responsible for your infertility. makes me really sad to think someone can't have a child biologically, but it's not my responsibility, nor is it this mother who is living in poverty. And they say, well, let's help you to have, put your baby in a place where she'll receive everything she needs, all what you can't give her. How is that a kind and logical thing? You know, growing up in poverty is not the worst thing. It's not fun. I grew up in poverty, but being told you are fulfilling someone's needs is worse than living in poverty any day, in my opinion. So anyway, we got these this requests out, and then here's our team of people who were our analyzers. Did I just make up a word? Analyzers. And check that out. We got 336 respondents of adoptees of all races. We got African American, Hispanic, a lot of white adoptees, and 129 identified as First Nations. And I'm saying First Nations here because our elder and friend that I was mentioning, that Jerry and I know, he said, whenever possible, use the term First Nations because we were the First Nations of this land. First Nations is, everyone thinks, well, that's Canada. Well, they're describing who they are. They were the First Nations of that land, right? So that's who we are. So you'll see me intersperse Native American with First Nations. But 129 identified as First Nations out of this study. But we examined closely 95 because 95 of them said they had been reconnected with their Indian family, their relatives. So here are the outcome. Most of them were women. And I always say, here's the benefit that they said would come from adoption. We could get good education, we'll have money, we'll have, whatever they think white society has over us as Native people. So that most had some college. So average income of the respondents, the average age was 50. So here are our initial findings. Not the outcome that safety, permanency, and finding a forever loving home is, huh? I share this across the nation over and over and over. And hardly people are stunned. They're like, whoa, but no one wants to really talk about it. And so how do we change it? Part of the reason is that there's big money in adoption. It's really $1 billion business. I understand that a Native baby is about $60,000. So white babies cost the most. And then you just go down the line of all the ethnicities, and Native children are the cheapest to adopt. So are we selling babies in that process? Putting a price tag on them tells me something. But think of the individuals the 95 individuals, this is their experience. Sexual abuse, 24%, that's a lot. Experienced physical abuse, that's 46%. Half. And the emotional abuse. The stories I hear from adoptees on what not just their adoptive parents, but maybe their adoptive cousins, their adoptive aunts and uncles say to them is really quite horrendous. There's such a stereotype of who we are. We're drunk and lazy. Actually, I've heard a lot of talk around that we're drunk and lazy and have a lot of incest. Well, who's doing that? You know, it's like I think to myself, throughout history, all the things that we were called are what was done to us, right? So when the first contact happened, made friends for a little bit and then killed us because we were barbarous. It was a barbarian. We were savages. We were all of this. And yet we welcomed them and kept them alive the first winter they were here, white people. And it's like, it's the classic projection constantly on us as a people. But so this is the reality. And if you wanted to really educate yourself about how people are reacting to finally using their voice on Twitter, it says adoption Twitter. And if you just click on that, you'll just see horrendous stories. You'll hear people talk about our birthright, because there's states that are like half the states are still closed, so that you cannot find out who you are. Closed birth records. And check this out. The depression rate, 71 out of the 95. And the suicide, 43 contemplated or planned suicide. And I think that the number of people that's happening is when you start having feelings of, when you grow up in an adoptive home, you don't look like anyone. And it is vital to feel that you fit in. And you don't ever fit in. And it's no one's fault in that terms, right? Because it's just is what it is there. But in terms of our development, having our image mirrored back to us is an important part of human development. Psych 101 tells us that, the mirroring process of a baby, understanding and identifying who their caretakers are. But I remember as a young person, like a lot of times white people look at me or Indian people look at me because I'm light skinned, didn't think I would have any issue, right? Except that I do this every once in a while when there's a whole bunch of white social workers in the room. And if there's Indians too, I'll say, so to the Indians, you guys, I'm pretty light skinned. Okay, cool. But am I light skinned white social workers? And they all go, no, because and it's interesting that they would even see that and say that, right? So that discrimination starts coming in unconsciously, even when you're in school, all the things that you experience as a kid growing up. So I did have a hard time in my town of 4,000 some people, being the only brown girl. It just was. I learned to act white. I think I was really good at it. And then somebody reminded me that you're just a squaw, stop it, kind of thing. And so I got called all the names. And so you have no language to talk about that. And if by chance you're able to say one thing, if the home isn't an emotionally sound and have high emotional intelligence, you get dismissed. Because most white people don't know how to handle racism because they're not in a racist situation. So they don't even know the words or the ways to help you through those kinds of things. So this emotional isolation is so intense, you guys. I wish I could describe it better, but it's like everyone around you doesn't understand you, period. Day in, day out, day in, day out. It does take a toll. So 20 of them did attempt. So our depression rate's higher than the average to what the CDC describes as how many should be impacted by depression. So here's the citation if you want to read that study. It's a riveting study. You should really read it. It's academic. It's no fun, but I think it's important for us to educate ourselves if you are at all working in and around social work. So the study wasn't being used in the way that I wanted it to. I wanted county workers to grab a hold of this and say, Your Honor, you know, there's an X% chance this child is not going to be in a healthy home. Look at the study says so right here. And years later, after the study was published, this judge called me. I know her out in Washington. She's the first Native to be on the Supreme Court of Washington. Called me, or no, messaged me one night. Don't you have a study? Yes, I sent it to her. I didn't hear from her. And then until I found out that she used it in a Supreme Court decision to keep a family together. So I was really excited about that. So she cited what was really, I think, important too, is connecting it to boarding schools. I've heard a lot of disparaging comments from social workers about Native families who are in crisis, who need some sort of intervention. And they really think that boarding school should not have affected us here today in 2024, when the reality is our boarding schools, the ones that were super problematic, were still open in the 60s. So you had individuals who may have gone to boarding school from age 6 to 14 or 17, living away from their families. And so when you're separated in that way from watching and family solve problems, relate to one another, all the things that you do when you're in a family, they didn't experience that. Generations of people. And it affected how they were able to come out and build relationships in order to have a healthy family. And it's one day I was thinking, holy man, humans are the only mammal that does not have the innate ability in them to take care of a newborn baby. If you never saw a mother nurse take care of the baby, make sure the head was safe, all of that, it's not in you to know that. It's in bears, snakes, fish, birds. They have that innate ability. It's built in them. We were, I believe, created, to have that connection, to have that human connection. And we're different in that way. So if you have a family who have generations of boarding school in them, some things they literally don't know. And they will, and I know that for myself, growing up in an abusive home, that's what I knew. I didn't know anything else. I started watching people around me. I didn't know how to do that. Most abusive circles, of families are not connected to the outside world. They live in their own isolation. So you have a family that presents itself with, physical abuse and all kinds of what they term as neglect. It's not seen as something that needs healing. They get sent to parenting classes. Those parenting classes are not very helpful to the average person. They need to watch and see how to interact with a baby, a toddler. They need to be sitting in a room with other grandmas and other parents, just talking, because that's how I was able to change my track with being a parent, is watching someone be the natural parent they were meant to be. That eventually happened for me, but that's another story. Take too long to tell you, but it's really, really true. If you did not experience it, it is not in you innately. And we think we're so smart as humans. Oh, we just, we're the bomb, right? We're got it together. turns out we're the most destructive in terms of the environment and everything else. So that's another subject. Be quiet, Sandy. Okay. So I'm glad that she acknowledged that, because I believe every family can heal. Every family. From my own experience and from listening to and talking to other mothers who are in the same experience, mothers that are neglectful or mean to their children do not go to bed thinking that kid deserved it. You usually go to bed feeling like shit, because there again, you did something that you know is wrong, but you don't know how to change it. So, okay, I'm pushing this one. Maybe I do this.
Is it thinking about not working again?
Yeah.
Okay.
There. So last year, there's been, for the last several years, there's been an assault on ICWA, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court this time, calling it unconstitutional. It's also supposed to be racist, because to have it means white people don't get first choice to adopt a Indian baby. But since we're not, this is not a race-based law, and we're not a race either. I mean, we're individuals who belong to sovereign nations. And so anyway, I was in the Northwoods last year, and I got a phone call, and a friend of mine told me, she said, Sandy, ICWA is upheld. And I went, wow, no way, because I didn't think it was going to be. There's been a lot of thrust on. There's been an incredible amount of money in lawyers and what's the word? Propaganda, I call it, to alleviate this, so that white families can adopt Indian babies. And right now they can, like I said, because if the social worker worked around ICWA, figured out a way to do it, there's so many things that people could do to be unscrupulous in this process, but it's important that we maintain that. So who would have thought Gorsuch from the Supreme Court? Because I sat in the hearing that several of us got to go to DC, and we got to sit in this hotel room just down the street from the Capitol. And I was watching lawyers just go like this. And they'd get up and pace because of the questions they would ask. You'd be like, you're a Supreme Court justice and you're asking this, they were asking questions like, well, you guys still war, you guys historically war with each other. So how is it that you, and I'm like, oh, it was so hard to listen to it. And I didn't think he evolved for some reason. And the other surprise, Amy Coney Barrett also backed it up. Surprise, surprise. I still don't trust her, but nevertheless, she sided in on that. But here's just that comment, the written decision there from Gorsuch citing our study. So now when I go to social work trainings, I go, well, since you guys don't want to do it, I guess the Supreme Court's going to use the study to, you should feel bad. No, I think people don't know how to use studies. I think when the questions are asked back, maybe so we're starting to train on how to use what's there. Because right now we have 6 papers from that pool of people about birth mothers, fostered, and different focuses that we could take on that. So anyway, and it makes me laugh that my name will be in the permanent record the little kid from Reedsburg, Wisconsin, who got people called me a squaw whore. Who, at my class reunion, people apologized to me because they saw the documentary that was out too. Several people apologized to me. I was in shock, but they grow up, mature, people change. So thought that was interesting. But now here it is. There's another lady. I think she's Mille Lacs. They used her paper as well from the 90s, in the late 90s. Her name will come to me. I got to start putting it in here so that it'll come back to me at midnight.
Huh.
But they, so that whoever his interns are, really brought up they had a lot of material. So I was happy to see that. Lila George, that's her name. Lila George, her paper was also cited. I should find that and put that up here too. But I was just blown away that they actually used our work to make a decision that it was, and that they really listened and watched about the physical, sexual, and emotional abuse. I mean, really, truly, they looked at it in the right way. Adoption is supposed to keep you safe, and here it doesn't. So it's just not a guarantee, period, no matter how you slice it. So this is called a wordle, and it's words that were shared more than a few times in the narrative part of the study. And this is what adoptees said in those narratives. And called home is what really spoke to me, because I remember when I was just beginning this work, talking to my friend and elder teacher person, I said, I feel compelled. I feel like something is pulling me to want. By then, I had already been home for 10 years and stuff. But I said, in the beginning, all those years of not knowing, it felt, I don't know how to put it into words again. It's just this feeling that you have. Well, then after, he said, well, you are prayed for. Wichoachage is a part of a ceremony of acknowledging the generation past, the generation present, and that generation yet to come. Wichoachage a kiun kupi, generation after generation, we are coming home. And I've heard others explain that it's the spiritual umbilical cord that tugs us back to our homelands. And that's why, because as soon as I was home, as soon as I walked on the land and met relatives, a lot of anxiety left immediately, for one, and just settled. And, then the fun of meeting different relatives and how they all had a story to tell, because I was 18 months old when I was taken. So that, and I also got to experience our beautiful Indian humor. One of the younger, so my mom was the oldest of 20 children, and she'd already passed before I made it home. And so one of her brothers, one of my uncles, we were both staying at my aunt's house for the powwow Rosebud Fair. And we were just talking back and forth, nothing big, and just visiting. And he goes, all of a sudden, he's like, yeah, I remember now. I remember you're Dinah's daughter. He said, I always got left with the little kids to babysit while all the adults went out and partied. I remember you now. I said, so you took care of me when I was a baby? And he goes, yeah. And I said, oh, was I a cute baby? And he goes, nah, you was ugly. And I just laughed and felt part of the family, because we have a lot of healing in our humor. And I would experience that now and then. So it was just, that was one of the first ones. So it was so funny. A good old Uncle Art. But anyway, just when you look at these words, it really tells you what I'd been saying all along, what adoptees are feeling and needing. How much more time do I have?
As much as you need. It's
Oh.
12:40.
So what does that mean? 20 minutes-ish? Oh, no, we want questions. That's right.
We got Q&A, so if we go
Okay.
over, it's okay.
Yeah, well, now we're getting to this part. So anyway, so it's way too long of a story to tell you, but I ended up expressing to Chris Leith, this Dakota Korean War veteran from Prairie Island, that as I started powwow dancing. I was part of a color guard, and I got to travel a lot of places powwow dancing. And I said, I never seen or heard a song for our relatives because we have all these other acknowledgments. You can make a family song, you can make a song for anything, graduation, uh, whatever. And I said, what would happen if we had a song and we invited all those relatives who had been separated to come into the center so that we could see them, and that a song and have that song for them, to have them dance and have the community see them. And what if we did that? And then I got really embarrassed because I thought I shouldn't be talking to him like that, because he's like a Sundance leader. He does all, I mean, and he just goes, you're right. We should have a song. We should definitely have a song. And he literally said these words that completely changed my life. But he goes, yes, there should be a song. You better give me tobacco because you've had a vision. And I said, vision, this is how stupid I was. I go, division or vision, don't like I have to be up on a hill and hungry for like 4 days before I eat. He goes, no, the creator puts it in your heart when you're ready to receive it. So he said, this is going to come to pass. I'll have Jerry Dearly make a song. We'll bring that song out on June 21st at the Black Hills World Peace and Prayer Day. You got to make sure you're there for that. And from there, he went to Jerry to make a song, and Jerry made the song. And I remember hearing it for the first time going, oh my gosh. And adoptees had traveled from all over the place to attend that ceremony in the Black Hills. And when it was over, the song was over. I came back and I said to Jerry, I don't know if you remember this, Jerry, but I said to you and Dave Chief, I said, man, we should do this at a powwow. We should have a powwow like this, because we would bring all that sadness that people carry, have that song and wipe them down, and they'll feel better. And then we can just keep on dancing, and they'll have that inside of them as opposed to this thing. And Jerry said, Sandy, if you plan it, we'll help you. And he's been helping for 20 years. So anyway, Jerry, wait. All right. So the reason this is able to happen is our culture is very healing. It is the center, I believe, of all our mental health, our emotional health, our spiritual health. And these kinds of things can happen when we gather like at powwows, because the removal of us was a very systematic removal. It's what we call, what's been termed a collective wound, meaning a mass happening all at once. And that's what removal was at that time. And so having a song, having ceremony is a collective healing. So when we're done, we bring them out. Jerry fills the pipe. We sing that song for them. The jingle dress dancers come and do a healing there. And then we say to the community, come out and shake their hand. And so when the shaking of hands takes place is when all that nurturing takes place. We don't tell them welcome home, but they do. They'll say, welcome back, and really a beautiful thing. So we've been doing that every year at the Minneapolis American Indian Center. And we just keep wanting other communities to do the same thing. But Jerry, I was going to ask you if you would be willing to sing that song, and maybe you want to say a word or two about how that song impacts us for healing. Whatever you want to do. You're good.
Okay. Culture is healing. I like what you're listening to. And the culture in this room is a culture. But you go outside this room, you have another culture, the Mayo Clinic culture. So when you have a culture is healing, I live in the greater metropolitan area of the Twin Cities, East St. Paul, and I go seek a sweat lodge. I go seek a time for myself because you have a wife and kids, all of that is fine, except if you want to heal, you have to do it yourself. You can't depend on your kids, your one that's not born yet, or even one that's older than you. It's all up to you and you yourself. Sandy reiterated on the fact that when you have a vision, it is time to act and not push that vision aside, and don't think that it is not a vision, because when you think that it's not a vision, it is. So as we begin this kind of thing, in 2000, I was taking the song to the Black Hills in way out there, Hill City. I didn't know. Somebody told me it's about like 30 miles out of Hill City. And when I showed up there in my little Geo Metro, you guys remember that? I could barely climb those hills. I was going, and then I'd really go fast. So finally, I kind of liked it, it's going real fast, and I'd go over. So I kind of got it. But it was really cold over there. So I had the heater on, and next morning I found everybody, and later on that day, I sat with a singing group from Standing Rock, and Hunkpapa Okha, Good House. Cedric and Cedric's wife is she's my niece because of the Sons of the Oglala. So it's really good to see them and their son picking up on the song. So they know that song. If I ever sang it again, I know they can help, but they probably don't remember it. That's been about 20 years. So today I brought my hand drum. I'm going to sing this song. I made this song. I didn't go into the archives of the University of Colorado press libraries or the Mayo Clinic libraries to find this tune, but I had the words. It says Wabaleni Chaki, Bali Chapo, all the ones that are in the situation of Wabaleni Cha. Be strong, Bali Chapo, because you will learn your culture, not listen to it, but you're going to learn your culture, and you will understand what it is that is yours, and it was always waiting for you. And at the end, I say, Hoka, hoka, he. The sound of this drum and the voice of this drum will heal you. So it doesn't have to be the song all the time, but find your way to, as culture is healing, you have something called songs, powwows, social gatherings, wild variety programs, and talking circles, beating, all that. You can listen to these songs. But this specific song is for the interpretation I just told you. And 20 years ago, I took the song up there. And since then, I've been singing it in our times up in Maine and San Diego and different places that we went and worked the adoptees healing center and the healing workshop in White Earth. We were over there, with Joe Bush, my good friend who made his journey. So kind of in that way, a lot of things like that kind of come to mind when I was listening to Sandy talk and reminiscing. Hey ha hey ya hey ya hey ya hey ya hey ya hey 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 ha hey yo hey ya hey ha hey ya hey ya hey ha yo hey yo hey 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 ha hey ya hey ya hey ha hey ya hey ya hey ha hey ya hey hoy Wableni chake blehe ya po hey la kol wicho anki anahopta po o wa shake lo hey Hoka hoka hey chan che ha ka hoki na ya opelo hey oh. One day early in the morning, I was sitting outside in East St. Paul and really quiet. And a neighbor over here, he was trying to start his lawnmower. Boom, boom. Listen to it. Boom. All of a sudden, I said, hey, I got the words. And I was listening to a hey ha, hey ya, hey ya, hey ha, hey ya, hey ya. See that? Kind of had the where he was trying to start that. Hey ha, hey ya, hey ya, hey ha, hey ya, hey ya, hey, hey ha, hey ya, hey ya. As the motor was trying to start going up and down. And I started working on that tune, and pretty soon, Wableni chake, blehe ya po, hey, la kol wicho ke anahopta po, o wa shakelo, hey. Hoka hoka he cha che ha ha hoki na ya opelo oh. This is the chanchicha, the voice of the drum you heard, and then the words that were part of this healing of the Wabalenija, the people that are beginning to come home. That's the song that I took out there. And that's the song that to this day I sing. I've never sang it at some gathering or celebration for anybody. I left that up to Sandy. That's her song. I have no right to sing that song anywhere without her knowledge, because that's her song. Because from her, she goes and she works with other people that are healing because they are adopted out many, many years ago. And I'm from the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. I never knew how to sing. I was a dancer since I was a little chubby Indian boy, Lakota boy. I always liked to dance. And that's how I began my way of life and dancing. And I didn't know any songs. Eventually, I started learning how to sing when I was 24 years old with the Crazy Horse Singers from Manderson, South Dakota on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. And then when my mother passed away, the sons of the Oglalas, Matt and Nellie Two Bulls, they began teaching me. They're all Lakota, but they all have a different teaching, a different song or something. And I was in the midst of a PhD therapy from singing and the way of life. Lakotia kelana o techika gap ka dueni lakotish nilehon. You know, it's not too many people are interested in their language because everything is European American. English, which is my second language. So my first language has always been to seek out my sister. She's 87 years old, and I talk with her in our language. And I have a cousin that he's married up in California. Talk to him. We all sit there and we're all getting older. But hopefully, with all things happening at the University of Minnesota, the schools around will have language classes. So maybe with that in mind, they'll know exactly what these words mean, and maybe some of the adoptees can take these classes so they'll know exactly what the words meant, because it's gonna go into the intricacy part of individual thought therapy and healing. And that's kind of the way I look at it. I'm listening to want to say thank you to Guthrie and my other. I have a friend. His name is David. I call him Iktomi. I mean, Igmu, because he's like a cat. You can't hear him, but he's busy, 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 working all the time. And then between this Dave and Igmu, they're gonna have a young one here coming pretty soon, and kind of happy for them. And I'm happy to be here to share this song with all of you. And I always say, now that you know my name is Jerry Dearly, I always say my name is Luke Warmwater, and I reside in a land of 11,831 lakes and 10,000 treatment centers. That's why I've been sober going on 28 years. So I'm a retired teacher now for, I don't know, 9 years. But I do a lot of powwows. I was telling Guthrie and Sandy I was going to carry the kettle to Saskatchewan, Canada this summer. And they asked me to come over there. So that was really nice because I'm Lakota, the land of Minnesota, or Minneosota, as they say, is Dakota. And these people that asked me to come are Nakota. They're N. So it'll be really good because, I'm a Lakota and I'm going to be in the land of the Nakota. And there's another Dakota because we all are announcers. Eapaha. So kind of in that way, that is my thought of a little bit about myself. And I started singing when I was 24. Now my son, he's has my Indian name. He's up in they sang in Albuquerque, New Mexico, I think it was, called Gathering of Nations, I think. They took fourth place there, and they're gradually making their way towards, North Dakota. And, he sings, which is kind of really neat for me because I taught all my sons how to sing. That's why I love to sing, but sometimes I just sit back at home and just take my hand drum. And this drum was made from a person from Washington State, and I sang for his at a Sundance. Sang for his son who was a paraplegic, and he was just all really into it. And I went back the next day. The man came over to my camp, and he gave me, here, that's yours. So I've had this for last 15 years, I think. So kind of in that way, I'm gonna put my part in that and say Wopila, and I hope all of you learned something from a little bit, because I know Sandy always, never used to talk that much. But all these years of doing that, she's gotten so good at what it is when she explains, because she is an adoptee and she works with others that are of the same status. Mitakas.
Jerry. Thank you. I might have one more slide. Oh, there's my contact information if you are wanting to get in contact with me. And please go and check out our website. You can see the other studies are all listed on there. You can see what we've done with our gatherings, and drop me an email if you have a question. And on my website, I'll have information about my book. I always forget to make a slide about that. But anyway, I have a book called A Child of the Indian Race, A Story of Return. And the reason it's a child of the Indian race in italics is that's how I'm referred to in my adoption papers. So wrong from the beginning, because we're not a race of people. So anyway, thank you very much for your attention. And I look forward to hearing from anybody who may want to contact me, because we don't have time for questions, right?
We'll cruise through it real quick. Excuse me. For those who are able to stick around, there is one question in the Q&A. Please do feel free to throw in a few more. I understand that it is 1 o'clock and some people need to jump off. But we do have a couple of questions. I know I've got one.
What's that one? Can't read it.
Was there any breakdown in where the abuse came from, parents versus siblings versus extended family? I think it's referring back to your slide.
Yeah. We may not have broke that down to that specific. I don't recall that, but I'm sure that we may have some information on that. If you are interested, you write down my email, and then I'll get back to our lead researcher to see if that information's in there. Thank you.
Thanks, Leslie. I have one question.
Yes.
I saw, I'm guessing that it's the Supreme Court case. It was at one time Zinke versus Brett Keane, and then it became Holland versus Brett Keane. So I'm guessing that ICWA then falls under the Department of Interior.
Yeah.
Do you
Everything Indian falls under the
Right,
department.
yeah. So it relates to Health and Human Services within the Bureau of Indian Affairs. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. I never even thought about it, right? Like, let me see if there's anything else that came in. Okay. Oh, looks like we're all finished up. You already kind of said your goodbye, and then we got into our things. If you'd like to
Yep.
say it again, otherwise I will
I think that's it.
close this out. Okay.
Doksha, okay.